all the tail pieces are marked and we are ready to start cutting. I found out that it's not very useful to mark the straight lines on the top, and so what I'm going to do is just visually align the saw with the piece to make the straight lines. They will just distract me. Cutting the tail pieces precisely is now extremely important. Any mistake we make in cutting the tails will actually show up, and we won't be able to correct it, especially if we cut on inside the material instead of outside. We have very little room for error because some of the pins are very small at the top. What I have to do is cut a little bit inside of the line, because it turns out the line is something like 1/128th of an inch away from the true side of the piece. The reason is the pen I'm using is not perfectly sharp, doesn't have 0 dimension. So it's not the pen was not touching exactly at the boundary between the two pieces of wood. If you want to have good precision, you have to cut a little bit inside, maybe about the width of a saw curve for this very fine saw. So that's basically what I'm going to start doing now. So I have to do two things. I have to keep the saw so I actually have a perfectly right angle this way, and I have to angle the saw to follow precisely those lines that I marked. These lines are much shorter than the lines I used before as a guideline, so it's actually harder to obtain a perfect angle. Even if you start cutting at one end of the line and end up at the other line, it's still not precise enough to actually do dovetails. This is the part that requires a lot of practice. You really need to practice this a lot in order to be able to cut very precisely. It's very important not to try to correct while you're cutting. We're going to do very bad. Now we have to take a look at how it went and possibly correct a little bit. Okay, so it seems that these lines are good, this line is good, this one I'm actually off. If I don't correct this, I won't be able to squeeze in the pin through. I could correct the pin, but I'm going to show you another trick that I'm actually going to apply. Okay, so let's see the trick. To correct for that mistake, namely we are too much inside with one of the saw curves, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use one of these two saws that have a significantly wider curve than the Japanese saw. And I'm going to follow the curve that I cut with the Japanese saw and just widen it. I'm going to start first with this gent saw, which I think is going to be enough. If it's not enough, I'm going to do it with this pack saw, which has the widest curve. Okay, so this is the curve that I have to enlarge. I'm just slowly going to go in there and try to enlarge it. And I think this is going to be good enough. So you see, now I got much closer to the line. I have a wider curve, but the curve doesn't matter. All of this stuff is going to be removed. I have a wider curve, and now I'm closer to the line. Notice on this piece that I am actually straight. And this is very important to remember, to stay as straight as possible, because this is going to be visible. We finished cutting the guides for the tails. Now what we have to do is remove this piece and this piece. These are the outside pieces. I'm gonna have to cut this way. Now there is a trick which after a lot of frustration I had to come up with. Instead of cutting directly on the saw curves, this will result actually in pushing this line about a 64th of an inch lower, or maybe a little bit less, but still gonna be visible. I'm gonna cut parallel to it, and then I'm going to use the chisel to clean up to the line. Then I'm going to get a crisp line, very much like what I'm going to get here when I'm going to par this out. and I won't have a big gap at the end, which is always very frustrating. So let's do the removal of this and this. Fine. Just a little bit. It should snap right up. Right? Same thing here. Just a little bit outside the line. And now I'm gonna take my chisel and just using paring, I will clean up to the line. You want to get a very crisp, nice line because that will show up. In order to get ready to chisel out these pieces that I have to remove so the pins can go in, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna use the drill press to make some holes here to allow actually the material that I'm gonna remove from here to not to push this pin part and snap parts of this out. So one hole in each of these pieces that I actually have to remove, and then we go and chisel it out. Now I actually have to remove those small pieces of wood where the pins are gonna go. So this is a chisel that I modified to actually have a very steep angle, so it won't destroy actually those sharp corners that I want to have for the pins. So basically what I did is I grounded this to actually get a triangle profile. I'm gonna start chiseling from the back side again, going roughly to the middle of the piece. Notice that I have the holes here from the screws. It's the stuff that I've done on the drill press. Go to the line and just tap it very carefully. This is a very sharp and narrow chisel, so it will go straight through if you're not careful. The special profile on this chisel helps a lot. Otherwise it's very frustrating and you destroy. Now we can remove these pieces of wood and clean up a little bit more and then try to see if the correct pins actually fit. So I'm gonna just push it through carefully so I don't hurt myself. We are ready now to do the first test. So what we are looking for is to be able to push the two pieces in, but not too easily, not too hard either. Okay, we might have to jiggle them a little bit. If you hear any kind of bad sounds, you want to stop. Right? So you see we got some very nice crisp lines in here. We'll have to clamp the box when we actually glue it. But other than that, it looks like the fit is reasonably nice. I still have a little bit of a problem here. This is always a little bit problematic. I might actually have to apply clamp pressure in here. Other than that, it looks like the dovetail are actually snug. And you see that even without glue, the joint is actually fairly rigid. So let's finish now the whole box. Finished chopping everything, and now we are ready to do the final fit. Alright, so I'm gonna use this dead blow hammer to just hammer everything down. So this is my, let me start with the back face. I'm gonna put it down. The right part should go in here. This is the first time I'm trying to fit this. I might have to wiggle it a little bit. Alright, left side. This is the part that we already wiggled and it's going in a little bit easier. Right, and now the front. And hopefully everything will match nice. Tap it in just a little bit. Might have to adjust things a little bit here and there. Let's hope not too much. Alright, so notice how rigid the box is after I put in the dovetails. If I'm going to put glue, this will basically never come apart. Right. I have a slight problem here. Actually, I have to put clamping pressure to tighten it up, but other than that, it looks crisp and essentially ready to glue, but we first have to decide how we're going to put the bottom and the top.